bit more freedom on the land, soft-sit, opca type stuff. You often see that they say, well, the courts operate under the jurisdiction of Admiralty law. And you get all this weird thing where they say things like man overboard, and they talk about birth certificates as if it's ship's birthing. But what I thought I'd discuss was, what is Admiralty law really? And so, because it's moderately interesting. And to assist me, I'm going to use my bumper book of modern Admiralty law that I always rely on. I don't do a lot of shipping stuff, but I do a little bit, and this book's a real lifesaver. The thing is, it's called Modern Admiralty Law, and it starts in 1360. And that's when King Edward set up what is effectively the Admiralty Court. At the time, there were three of them. They had three admirals, and they were all responsible for a little different bit of the sea, sort of like north, south, east. Eventually, they all amalgamated into one Admiralty Court, and it dealt with all things pertaining to shipping. Now, shipping law we often say it's the oldest of international law. And it really dates back as far as we have records back to sort of before the Phoenicians. And it seems to be that all the warring states around the Mediterranean, the one thing they all agreed on was that making lots of money was really cool. So they need it was just purely for trade reasons. And that's why certain things like the fact that piracy is illegal and anybody can take down a pirate ship. That dates back to those days, when Julius Caesar got kidnapped by pirates and made all friends with them, and they thought it was fantastic, and he got annoyed that they asked for a particular ransom and he didn't think it was high enough, so they got the higher paid ransom, and he went away all happy and then came back with a big fleet and slaughtered them all. But yeah, so that's like I say, that's old shipping law. But you had this Admiralty Court, and it actually was a separate jurisdiction at the time. We've discussed before how, back then there were things like there were different courts of equity, and we had Stanley law down here, and, there were numerous parallel legal systems all competing. Now, one thing that did cause a problem was that all the colonies, because, they're overseas and, Navy, they came under the jurisdiction of the Admiralty Court. And this was a big thing that led up to part of the American Revolution, was that all the grievances were dealt with in the Admiralty Court, and no juries, because it was civil proceedings, and everything sort of, on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt. And that was one of the things that did annoy sort of, all the colonists. But anyway, in the sort of late 19th century, about 1876, as discussed before, we had these Judicature Acts, which, they're the ones that said, right, no more separate courts of equity, you just do equity in the regular courts along with common law. They also said, right, no more separate Admiralty Court. It is now just it ended up being part of the Chancery Division, because, the High Court, you've got your sort of King's Bench Division, Family Division, Chancery Division, and the Admiralty got shuffled off into the Chancery Division, and it actually lost its special title and name. It was just, another civil court. However, just through tradition, people still call it the Admiralty Court, and it's actually now, it's now in the Rolls Building, which is part of the High Court and part of the Royal Courts of Justice. It's just effectively a really nice extension. The RCJ, I'll have to talk about that sometime. That was a guy designed by a person called Mr. Sweet, who was an architect, and he entered a competition. And that was actually a design he had rejected for a cathedral, which is why it's very churchified looking. But yeah, so that's why, like I say, they're just in the Rolls Building. But this is the whole thing. Admiralty law, it's just specialist shipping law. That's all it is. There is some crossover with the regular courts. Some contract cases, could be dealt with just in sort of, the High Court generally. But because anything to do with sort of shipping, just because they have a particular expertise, so they've got sort of regular judges who sit there. So that's why it exists. But like I say, there's no overlap. Courts are not sitting under the Admiralty jurisdiction, like I say, because even the Admiralty Court, in quotes, isn't sitting under the Admiralty jurisdiction anymore. That vanished in 1876. But anyway, just thought you might find that interesting. If you did, please consider clicking the like button and also possibly subscribing.